So okay, this night we are making a flight with the Embraer 145 by Field Air. This is let's say a very different aircraft comparing to more modern aircraft like the 737 or the A320. And the particularity of this aircraft is that it doesn't have an auto throttle, nor it doesn't have a VINA feature. So it requires for sure a higher workload comparing to more modern aircraft. So okay, we are parked here at Cardiff Airport, parking number 9, and this will be a very short flight. We will do a standard departure. We can see the standard departure here. The standard departure will be this. We will depart from runway 30 and we'll follow the Brecon 1 Alpha departure, which is this, until reaching the Brecon VOR. Then from Brecon VOR we will set an heading select and we will go down there in order to make an ILS approach for runway 12. So this will be a sort of circuit around the runway, but nevertheless we will follow for the first part of the flight the standard departure, the Brecon 1 Alpha departure. Okay, so let's get back into the cockpit and start the aircraft. So first of all we have to switch on the battery.
Power unit, okay.
Avionic master on, emergency light armed, and we can start the APU. So fuel pump power number 2 on, APU master on. Wait for 2 seconds and then we can start the APU. Okay, the APU is coming up. You can see our RPM here. Okay, 100%. APU is available, so we can switch on the APU bleed packs 1 and 2, and we also can switch on the fast seat belts and no smoking together with the navigation lights. Okay, the IRS is already aligned as we choose the fast alignment for this flight, so we can go down to the pedestal panel and we can set some FMS data. So initialization, we select the GPS position number 1 and we load this, go to flight plan. The destination will be Echo Golf Foxtrot. We set the departure from runway 30 Brecon 1 Alpha and we activate this. Check all the waypoints. Okay. And we can go to perform initialization now. So here we have to input the transition altitude for this flight, for this airport is 6,000 feet, and we set a cruise altitude of 8,000. And the fuel on board is 4,340 kilos. 340 is set. Cargo weight is 537 kilos. And passenger on board we are actually boarding 40 passengers, and the FMC automatically calculates the overweight of the passenger, considering that every passenger weighs 86 kilos. So we set 40 passengers, and now we have the gross weight automatically calculated. We confirm the initialization. Go to the takeoff page, check all the data. Okay, so this aircraft has an interesting feature, which is an automatic checklist, which is here. I put this here on my cockpit, and so we can start with the cold and dark checklist and follow the co-pilot suggestion that we will hear.
Cold and dark checklist. APU on. Emergency lights. Armed. Avionics. Master. 2 on. FMS.
So it's asking to initialize the FMS now. We initialize the FMS.
Initialized.
Okay.
Speeds.
Okay, speeds. Now on the navigation display, we have all those buttons here. We have to set the speed for takeoff. So we go to speeds, and this feature is calc. He automatically calculates
trims.
all the speeds for us. Set the trim, which is here, to 5 to 6 degrees up.
Set takeoff data.
Now the takeoff data is inserted over on the overhead panel, and we have to put in the correct external temperature, which is 10 degrees today in Cardiff. So we set it.
Enter. End of checklist.
And the checklist is done. So we go ahead and ask us to get ready for the pushback. And start pushback and nose to the right. Parking brake is set. Meanwhile, we set the autopilot section, switch on both flight director, yaw damper, set the maximum altitude to 6,000 feet, which is the maximum altitude that we can maintain over the standard departure. 6,000 is set. Set the radio to nav1 and nav2, and set the FMS as a source for the navigation. Weather radar on standby. Red beacon is on. The parking brake is released. Okay, engine ready to start, checklist.
Ready to start checklist. On. Red beacon. Fuel pump power.
2 on.
2 on. Pneumatic panel checked. Emergency parking brake. On. Steering and on. Doors closed. End of checklist.
Okay, engine startup.
Engine start checklist. Engine 1.
We take off the cover and start the engine number 1. Okay, and 2, You can see it here. And 2 rising and 1. Oil pressure. Ignition alpha.
On. Engine 2.
Engine 2 starting. Parking brake is set.
On. End of checklist.
So now, set the flap to 9 degrees. And we are ready for taxi. Wait for the marshal signal. Okay, here comes the signal and we can start the taxi. Okay, during the taxi I switch on the flight attendant safety information.
Welcome aboard. Before we depart, please remove the safety card from the seat behind
Switch on the taxi light.
and follow along as we demonstrate the safety features of this aircraft. We appreciate your complete attention to this important safety information. If you're seated in an exit row, you may be required to assist the crew in an emergency. If you are unable to perform the functions described on the safety card, then please advise the flight attendant for reseating at the end of this video. To fasten your seatbelt low and tight against your lap, insert the metal fitting into the buckle. Tighten the belt by pulling on the loose.
Okay, so as last checks we have to switch on the toggle button, which is here. Set the flight director, which is pointing up.
There are 2 exit doors in this aircraft. Each exit is marked with a sign overhead. The main doors open by moving the large handle in the direction of the arrow. Open the overwing exits by removing the cover and pulling down on the lock handle.
Set the hydraulics to auto and the bleed, engine bleed 1 and 2 on. APU bleed off and we can switch off the APU.
In an evacuation, exit path lights will illuminate to guide you to an exit. The seat bottom cushion can be used for flotation in a water landing. To use, pull the cushion from the seat with your arms through the straps and hug the cushion to your chest, as shown on the safety card. If needed, oxygen masks will drop from above your seat.
Set the TCAS on TA array.
Plastic tubing. Place the mask over your nose and mouth. Put the elastic band over your head and tighten the straps as necessary. Although the band
You can go here on the right on Alpha 2.
Secure your mask before helping others and continue using until directed by a crew member. This is a non-smoking airline. Law prohibits tampering with, disabling, or destroying laboratory smoke detectors. Law also requires customers to comply with all lighted signs, light bars, and crew member instructions. Please ensure your carry-on items and tray tables are stowed. Your seat back is in full upright position, headrest stowed, and your seatbelt is securely fastened. Be sure that laptop computers, cell phones, and all personal electronics
Okay, stop
are
here.
and properly stowed. If an
Before the
emergency
holding
evacuation
line
is necessary,
and set
leave all
parking brake.
carry-on items behind. If you have any questions regarding safety, please ask a flight attendant. On behalf of your flight crew, thank you for your attention. It is our pleasure to have you aboard, and we hope you enjoy your flight.
Okay, before takeoff checklist.
Before takeoff checklist. Exterior lights. On.
It's on.
Transponder 1 TARA. Flight controls.
Check.
Checked. Radar. Standby.
Takeoff configuration.
Checked. End of checklist.
Okay, before the takeoff we set, we have to receive the 80s, so the correct frequency is 122.0.
Echo Golf, Foxtrot, airport information Delta 1720, weather wind 261 at 8, visibility 6, sky condition ceiling 800, broken ceiling 1,400, broken ceiling 1,900, broken moderate rain, temperature 902.8, QNH 1000. Device controller on initial contact, you have information
Okay, 1000 is set. And we are ready for takeoff. We make the takeoff configuration checks.
Takeoff. Okay.
Okay, takeoff is okay, and we can align to the runway. Smaller zoom factor here. Okay, ready. So as I said before, this aircraft doesn't have a VNAV function, so I will do this manually, and after 500 feet I will engage nav, which is LNAV in this aircraft. And after passing 1,500 feet I will set level change, which is FLC here, this button, and then engage autopilot here. Okay, ready. '51, engine stabilized, and toga.
Thrust checked. Speed alive.
Check.
Give me knots. V1. Rotate.
We're airborne. Gear up. So I'm maintaining the flight direction in the center now.
Gear up.
Passing 500 feet nav. LNAV is armed. It's still following the heading select now. Passing 1,500, flight level change, and set climb thrust. And nav is operative. And now we can switch on the autopilot one. flight level change mode now is accelerating the aircraft to 240 knots. While maintaining a climb altitude. And the aircraft will stop climbing at 6,000 feet, which is the altitude that we have armed. Turning to right now, directed to Brecon-Vior. Okay, we can do the after takeoff checklist.
After takeoff checklist. Landing gear up. Flaps
Flaps are coming up.
up. Thrust rating climb. Overhead panel checked. Altimeters
The altimeter is
set.
set.
End of checklist.
Okay, coming to 6,000. The aircraft is leveling off, and we have to manually reduce the thrust. Not having an auto throttle, we have to take over on the throttles in order to maintain the desired speed. And to avoid an overspeed. So after reaching Brecon-Vior, we will switch to heating select and set an heating of more or less 165 in order to get back to the runway for an ILS for runway 12. We can already set the heating for the next waypoint, which is 165. 165 is set. And we can set the frequency for the ILS. Made a mistake before. It's not an ILS for runway 12, it's an ILS for runway 30, which is the same runway we have chosen for the takeoff. So the frequency for ILS for runway 30 is 110.7, and we set it here on nav1 110.7. Is set. Okay, we switch to heating select. And we switch the flight director in nav mode, no more in FMS mode. So now everything I put in is the aircraft will follow instruction that I insert in the autopilot section because I am in nav mode. Let's put in 160. 160 is set. set altitude for the glide interception is 2,200. So in the altitude selector we set 2,200 is set, and we can begin our descent using speed mode. In speed mode I set a certain speed for descent, namely we have to throttle back power, namely 220 in this case, and I take the throttle to minimum power and apply some auto brakes. Now what the aircraft will do a descent after reaching 220, it will start the descent maintaining this speed. We also set the course of the localizer, which is 297. Is set. You can already see the localizer here, the glide slope here. This arrow warning inform us that we are reaching the preset altitude, so we put the auto brakes back in. And now we turn right in order to intercept the localizer. Now the aircraft is leveling off, and we have to manually adjust the throttle again in order to maintain the desired speed. Because as I said before, this aircraft doesn't have an auto throttle, so everything is manual. We are on the approach mode, so the localizer and glide slope are armed now. Set the speed to 180. And flaps 9. So we calculate the speeds for the approach. 144 for our weight now. So we have to keep in mind this when approaching. Okay, the localizer is coming in. And also the glide slope. So gear down and flaps 18. Speed is set to the approach speed +5, which is 149. And we can do the before landing checklist.
Before landing checklist. Landing gear down, flaps.
22.
22, autopilot.
We wait a little before disconnecting the autopilot. We don't have an auto land in this aircraft, so the land is manual. The aircraft is stabilized on both glide slope and the localizer, and we can start seeing the runway in front of us. We also switch on the APU before landing. And below 1,000 feet I will take over on the autopilot and do a manual landing. Speed is good. Okay, 1,000, autopilot off.
Autopilot. Autopilot.
Off, end of checklist.
Now I will stay on the flight director in order to maintain the localizer and glide slope. Everything seems good.
Approaching minimums.
Okay, minimums. Landing.
100.
Touchdown. Two reverse. Manual braking. Switch on the reverse, switch off the reverse.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived at our destination. Please remain seated with your seatbelt set until the sound of the gate, when the captain turns off the seatbelt sign. We hope your flight was a pleasant one. Thank you for flying with us. We hope to see you again soon.
Okay, after landing checklist.
After landing checklist. Exterior lights. Off. Ice protection, checked. Transponder.
Off.
Standby. Gust lock.
Is set.
On. Flaps, trims. 0. 7 up. End of checklist.
Okay, now we can taxi to the gate. Switch off the flight directors and the yaw damper, and switch off all the radios, receivers. Strobe lights are already off and landing lights are off. APU is on. And we continue the taxi. Okay, our parking will be the park from which we started, namely number 9. Here is number 10, and the next is number 9. Here it comes. Okay, parking brake is set and engine 1 and 2 off. So we will do the parking checklist now.
Parking checklist. Fasten seatbelt. No smoking. Off. Hydraulic electrical pump.
Off.
Off. Red beacon.
Is off.
Off. APU.
APU is
Lock set position.
off.
Off. End of checklist.
Okay, so we are at the gate, and I hope you have enjoyed the flight and have a nice evening.